Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Dear students, dear listeners, last time, if you remember, we presented the notion of the lexicon, how the lexicon is organized. We talked about the architecture of the lexicon in terms of the two levels of inflectional as well as the derivational uh, dimensions. Also, we talked about the processes, whether diachronic or synchronic, that are determined by the structure of the lexicon. Today, we are going to proceed with our business here in terms of the lexicon structure and other dimensions, which are called the diachronic dimensions. So when we talk about the diachronic dimension here or dimensions, we talk about the historical changes that take place in the language, and these changes actually motivate the change or changes. One of these, let's say, evident and concrete, let's say, examples, what we see here is called a grammaticalization. If we look into grammaticalization, actually it is similar to the notion of grammar. So when we talk about grammar at the, let's say, traditional level, it is grammatical forms, the forms that do not have any content, semantic content, but they add a kind of function. They have a function in the understanding, in the building of the sentence or the construction. Here we talk about a process that at the phonological level is similar to grammar-oriented forms, which is called grammaticalization. So here, grammaticalization is a kind of change, whether this change is at the syntactic level, at the semantic level, at the morphological level, or any other level. This change actually whereby a lexical form that has semantic content, like nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and so on and so forth. This form actually turns into a grammatical item. It becomes a kind of a grammatical form, and it is no longer a lexical form. Grammatical items in general, like auxiliaries, pronouns, and so on and so forth. So this is a kind of result. It's a kind of a consequence of different changes, different developments, different evolution patterns that actually target these lexical forms to become grammatical forms. So let's look into a simple example to see the notion grammaticalization and how it works on verbs like the verb go, right? Typically speaking, this verb go from a diachronic perspective has undergone a kind of change under the umbrella of grammaticalization. If we look into the etymology of this verb, we notice that it does actually undergo this kind of change. So, and here I have just provided a kind of simple examples to show how the verb go actually has become, let's say, grammaticalized in English. So if we look into example number one, so here I go to the park every day. Now here the verb go is lexical. It has a semantic content, features. It indicates the moving of a body from one place into another. So this verb go is lexical. Uh, Similarly, we have will go, which means I have the intention to go to the park tomorrow. So here we have the auxiliary form, which is will, plus the infinitival form, which is go to indicate the a futurity or intention meaning for the verb go. I'm going to the park now to meet the old friend or an old friend. I'm going now to the park. That means now it is a progressive verb indicating that I am in the process of moving from one place into another, which is the park, of course. Why? In order to meet an old friend. So here we have a verb of going to, which is progressive or continuous, right? In the process of, and the intention is, or the purpose is to meet an old friend. So here, going to is a lexical verb, okay? So we have in order, so to meet here or here, the function for the verb going to is to meet an old friend. And here, as if we look into I'm going to here, go, we said that go is lexical. So the evidence that this verb is lexical is that it cannot accept shortening. So we cannot say that I am gonna meet an old man in the park now. So this is an illegal form because the verb go is lexical and it cannot be shortened. It cannot be shortened. But if we look here, the turning point in the history of this verb is evident in six. So here we see I am gonna meet an old friend tomorrow. If we notice here that we have I am going to meet an old friend tomorrow, right? So here, if we notice that there is a kind of actually shift in the etymology of the verb go from being totally lexical into being grammatical to indicate intentionality, to indicate futurity, to indicate a state of determination to do the verb. So here I am going to, it means that I am going to, I will meet an old friend. So go has shifted to be a grammatical as an auxiliary verb, so it can be shortened. It can be shortened, i.e., we can change it from being going to into gonna. So this process indicates that going to is an auxiliary verb followed by meet, similar to will followed by meet, right? So it is no longer indicating that the verb go here is lexical, rather it is a grammatical. So if we look into here, I shall will meet an old friend tomorrow. So the let's say a replacement test here, right? When we say that that shall or will can be replaced with I am going to. So we can say I am going to meet the old or an old friend tomorrow. So we can replace it with I shall or will meet the old or an old friend tomorrow. This gives us evidence that the verb go is no longer a lexical only, rather it becomes a grammatical form to indicate futurity or intentionality. So once the verb is observed or is categorized as a grammaticalized form, it actually undergoes different consequences, and these consequences we are called them mechanisms. So in order to make a full or a good diagnosis for the grammaticalization that takes place on a verb like go, for example, we should bear in mind that there are certain mechanisms, that there are certain actually processes that target such a form like this. So one of these mechanisms is called desemanticization or semantic bleaching. So, typically speaking, when we talk about desemanticization or semantic bleaching, we indicate or we mean that there is a loss of meaning or semantic content in the verb, uh, while only its grammatical content is maintained. So, for example, if we look into the Proto-Germanic example, lik here, which means body or course, right? Here, this verb has undergone a kind of desemanticization process in the sense that it no longer indicates body or course only. Rather, it has been grammaticalized, and the mechanism of grammaticalization triggers or, let's say, motivates the different meaning or different levels of grammaticalization. Like the first one is li, right? Which is derived from this form licking here, as in bodily or angrily. So we have the first projection of grammaticalization with li, and also we have like, right? So licking here becomes like with the final consonant deletion and diphthongization, right, of e into I. Um, as a kind of maybe great as a result of the so-called great vowel shift, right, that has taken place on the E becomes I, okay, and it renders the final consonant to delete. Another process is called the morphological. Here, morphological reduction or decategorization, it is no longer, or it is not only a target for desemanticization, I mean grammaticalization, but also it is a target for the loss of certain morphological and syntactic elements that have typically been characteristics of the initial category, but which are actually not relevant to the grammatical function. So this actually evident here in examples like the demonstrative that in English. So in English we have the demonstrative that. For the singular we say that boy, and for the plurals we say those boys, right? So actually, we noticed that in English, that as a demonstrative pronoun is sensitive to the number variations. So that and those, okay? So here, the demonstrative pronoun that is or has undergone a kind of grammaticalization to become a relative clause or a relative pronoun marker or relative clause marker or a relative pronoun. So after being grammaticalized, so we notice that the relative pronoun that has been grammaticalized with no sensitivity to either number, gender, case, or whatsoever. It has maintained its form that with no change. So as a relative pronoun, it is that only with no changes at all. But as a demonstrative pronoun, it is sensitive to changes. So here we notice that it is a result of grammaticalization. Another mechanism like mechanism of grammaticalization is called the phonetic erosion or phonological attrition or phonological reduction. So we have different technical terms, but all of them imply to the idea that, or to the phenomenon of an expression that loses its phonetic substance, that for some phonemes, some sounds, when it undergoes grammaticalization. So the phonological substance or the phonological, let's say, the sound itself is likely to be reduced in some way to become more dependent on surrounding phonological or phonetic material. So here we talk about reduction, and this reduction is phonemic, I mean to phonemes, Now, when the phoneme here, we call it substance because sometimes it is not predictable. The reduced form is not totally predictable because it can be maybe one phoneme, or maybe it can go beyond. It can go beyond the phoneme to parts of a syllable. In general, we can say that a reduction, and then it is the phoneme, and it becomes what we say, it becomes dependent on surrounding, i.e., it cannot be free. It should be attached to a surrounding phonetic material. It cannot stand by itself. So we can say the following, that according to the phonetic erosion level here, we can say that the linguistic expression loses its phonetic, or some of its phonetic substance, I mean some phonemes, whether in the maybe in the onset position of the syllable or in the coda position of the syllable. And this, let's say, this loss creates the environment for being bound phoneme. So it cannot stand by itself. It should attach to other phonemes as a part of abbreviation, or what's the so-called criticization in the language. And criticization is a well-known phenomenon observed in languages like Arabic. So different phonetic erosions or erosion patterns in the language can be displayed at different levels. So it can be like loss of phonetic segments, including loss of full syllables, a total syllable deletes, or some suprasegmental properties like stress, tone, intonation. I mean a change in stress, a change in intonation patterns, or a change in tone. Sometimes loss of phonetic autonomy and adaptation to adjacent units, or it can be a kind of simplification of the phonemes. I mean, simplification, maybe CC become 1C, or CCC become CC or 1C. I mean, consonants are, or consonant clusters are simplified. Another piece of evidence here to grammaticalization is what we see in grammaticalization in Spanish. As we all know, that Spanish is a kind of descendant of Latin, right? Spanish is highly inflectional language. It is sensitive to case marking, to gender marking, and so on and so forth. And also, it happens that Spanish also loves grammaticalization. So if we look into Spanish here, the data that we have at the spell out, the data that we have at the utterance level, uh, is like here we have a data that reflects tense patterns, present and future. And here we have at the at vertical level, we have the number, first person, second, third person, singular and the plural. So here we have canto. Um, uh, Sorry for damaging some Spanish because I'm not speaking Spanish. So we have canto, I sing, cantas, right? Cantas, you singular sing, canta, you third pair, you singular. Sorry, he or she sings. Cantamos, which is I or we sing. Cantais, which is you plural sing, and cantan, which is they plural, they sing, whether males or females, singular or masculine. Masculine or feminine. And here for the future, for the will sing, right? The same. We have cantare, I will sing, cantarás, you will sing, cantará, they will sing, cantaremos, we will sing, cantarais, you will sing, I mean you plural, and cantaran, which is they will sing, I mean plural, they will sing plural. If we look into this data, actually, it is interesting to notice that there is a kind of auxiliary verb, which is habere or habere, right, in Spanish, which is this verb which means to have, right, which is of course as an ancestor of Latin came. I mean, Spanish came from Latin. This haberi or haberi has undergone a grammaticalization into future tense patterns. So the personal endings in the future tense patterns are I mean, as, amos, is, and an that we see here. So typically it is a kind of cantar, canta, haberi, right? Canta, Aberi, and this Aberi has been grammaticalized to, as we said, to a, as, amos, is, and to represent grammaticalization in this interesting language. And they are here presented cantare becomes cantare. So here we said that as a part of the grammaticalization process is that it is no longer, as we said, it is no longer free. It should be depending upon uh, neighboring parts, right? So it is bound. It is bound. So here, hey cantar hey, right, becomes cantare after being grammaticalized. So this a here, hey, grammaticalized into a. So here we have hey becomes a, and then it is attached, right? It is attached to the full surrounding form. Cantaras, the same. Cantarha, cantara. Cantaremos, the same. Cantares, Cantarais, and Cantarhan, Cantaran. So here we notice that we have different processes, like as we said, uh, the first one is, let's say, bleaching or desemanticization. Two, we have shortening, right? And finally, we have criticization. Right? So here we have bleaching, a desemanticization. After being desemanticized, it is subject to shortening. After being shortened, it is subject to criticization because it cannot stand by itself. So these reflect the historical or the chronic, let's say, change that the notion grammaticalization can be represented in the language. So here, if we look into lexicalization, which is the opposite of grammaticalization, where a grammatical form turns into a lexical form. So here we have for the future marker sofa, right? Out of sofa, which is followed by, so when you say sofa, for example, sofa yaktub, right? Right? Sofa yaktubu, right? So here we have the future marker, which is sofa, and we have the present tense form, which is yaktubu. And with the passage of time, this sofa has no longer remained a kind of auxiliary form, but out of this we come up with verbs like yusawif, to postpone, taswif, postponing, and so on and so forth. So this actually enriches the lexicon and causes the lexicalization process to be a productive process in the language, to be a productive process in the language. So we notice that a grammaticalization, or sorry, lexicalization can lead to the productivity of the lexicon. Now we move to another process which is called analogical change. Just to draw your attention, dear listeners and students, that these, I mean, grammaticalization and analogy, analogical change, are typically diachronic processes. So here, analogical change, when we have a new word or form that is formed in analogy with قياس, I mean, or on a model of another word. So we have dig, dug, right? So we have sting, stang, stick, stuck. So we notice that there is a kind of competitive rule, or there are competitive rules that target the verb dig, dug, or digged with ed. So in analogy with already existing productive and highly frequent forms like sting, stang, stick, stack, there is a kind of preferable or there is a preference for the use of dig, dug instead of digged, which is, as we know, which is a kind of competitive form for the irregular, sorry, for the regular form, which is digged. Okay, so we notice that analogy can be a driving motivation, can be a very strong and very convincing, actually, mechanism that can deactivate at a certain point the power of regularization in the lexicon due to the so-called analogy. So this comes through the so-called proportional analogy, equation, which comes through the formulation of a rule like stick, stack, dig, dug, and so on and so forth. So this actually can be represented in the so-called extension, analogical extension. Another part which is very important for this kind of analogy is the so-called analogical leveling. In general, dear students, here we have leveling and analogy. Leveling means that the alternation in the paradigm, the alternation in the language disappears, eliminates, it drops, right? So we notice that leveling, right? We notice that leveling here, as we said, it indicates, let's say, disappearance of differences, disappearance of differences. Okay, uh, and here the elimination of these differences is triggered by analogy, is triggered by, so it is restricted, it is constrained by analogy. It's constrained by analogy. Let's see the example here from French, right? So as we know that the French came from Latin, right? And according to this language, dear students, we look into this paradigm here, uh, to this data. In this data, we have a kind of comparison between Old French and Modern French in terms of the verb find. If we look into the verb conjugation for French, we find the following: that the trouver, the lexical form trouver, used to have two different forms: trouve with OU, V, when it has a suffix, sorry, a stress suffix. So it is trouve like this when when it has a stressed suffix, and true with V when with when it is stressed. The stem itself is stressed. So we notice that we have two different allomorphs, that we have true, right, becomes true with E when it is stressed, right? If we consider that this form true is the morpheme, right? Or the other way around is possible. That depends upon the let's say ubiquity of the form in the language, the distribution of the form in the language. So here, uh, if we look into the verb in Old French, je trouve, right? Je trouve, right? Here, it is here. We notice that it is with uh, here the underlined form. Actually, the underlined form means stress, right? The underlined form is stress. So it is with EU because the stem is stressed. The second you find here, it is also, right? It is also um, stressed, right? And it is EU. It is also stressed and it is EU, right? Here, true ones, we have a stress suffix and it is OU. And with you find here, we have EZ, right? It is stress suffix and it is OU. So we notice that when the suffix is stressed, it is OU. When the stem itself is stressed, it is EU. So we notice that in older French, we have two forms sensitive to stress. When it is EU, it is stress itself. When OU, like trove here, when the suffix is stressed. Now, according to older French, there used to be two patterns, two modes of change, right, that are sensitive to stress. If we look into modern French here, we find a different story. We find that the two forms, OU and EU, the two forms, have been changed into only one. There is a kind of morphological neutralization, or what we have analogical, we have a kind of analogical leveling. So we notice that the two forms in older French have become one. So regardless of where stress is located, regardless of the position of stress, in modern French there is a winner, there is a winning form, which is true with OUV, right? Regardless of whether the stress is on the suffix or the stem itself is stressed. Regardless of these two suprasegmental phenomena, we notice that the present day French witnesses or contains the same pattern, or this, as I called it, the age we have a winner, which is the OU, regardless of, as we said, stress in the language. So here, the same idea. Here we have el true vent, we have EU because it is stressed, but when the present day English, it is OU, it is a result of a called analogical leveling. So here we notice that if we look into both older French and modern French, we notice that in older French, that language used to differentiate between two forms in the stem at the stem level, whether it is OU, right? Whether it is OU when it is stressed, or with EU, true, when it has a kind of stress suffix. But in the present day English, we notice that this distinction is eliminated due to the process of analogical leavening. Thank you.